with the tears rolling down.
President Powell, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Charles Rolland African American Legislative Day. This year we celebrate our 16 years in a row and 13 years since we changed the name to Charles Rolland African American Legislative Day. Today we want to be able to connect with our community and share the importance of participating in the legislative project process in this country. This time, I want to invite our pastor, Daniel, to lead us from Missionary Baptist Church to lead us in prayer. Wilhelmina, are you there?
I'm here. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Reverend Wilhelmina Daniel, Associate Minister at Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church, where Reverend Robert L. Manaway Sr. is the pastor. I'm a member of the A. Philip Randolph Institute, the Washington Christian Leadership Coalition, and the United Black Clergy. I would ask you now to bow your heads during this invocation. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. God our Father, we invite you into this momentous time to be at our state capitol in Olympia, yet be in our homes across the state physically. We pray, God, for the governor and legislators who are there to protect our inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in our respective cities, the state of Washington, and the United States of America. We pray, Lord, that this session is one that you would have it to be. We ask these things in your Son, Jesus' name, and for his sake and his sake alone. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Wilhelmina. At this point, we want to invite Reverend Harriet to address us at the order of the day. Reverend Harriet, are you there?
Good morning. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. The order of the day, we have a lot of things planned today. We're so glad that you're here. And one of the things that we will have the governor should be coming to greet us. We have lots of panels. One of the we will have the secretary. We will have greetings from the Department of Corrections, Department of Transportation. We have the Speaker of the House to be here with us, also from the Senate. And also we will have James Bible leading police accountability panel with some victims, families of victims who have been affected by police violence on the Washington State Coalition for Police Accountability. And also, we'll have Reverend Benz walking us through all the bills that's being presented, and also ones with the physical note on them. And then this is such an auspicious year. We have a panel discussion led by the African American Black Caucus. This is the first time in the history of the state of Washington we've had this many African Americans who are elected. And also we will have some entertainment. And then we'll be wrapping up the service the afternoon with some young people there. So before I want to go back to the national president of the A. Philip Randolph Institute. Ms. Cleola Brown is going to bring us greetings here in a few minutes, and we're so excited about that. And then it's going to be a video of the president of Gabriel and myself Joe Shubu giving some information about the legislation legislative day and why we're doing this. And our goal overall is for you to understand what's going on, to hear about the bills, and to actually get involved, go back to your community and get more engaged in this process. And we thank you so much.
Thank you, Reverend Harriet. At this time, I want to invite Governor of Washington State, Governor Jay Inslee, to give us some words, greetings, and speak to the constituency of his state. Governor Inslee, are you? We have the governor available.
Oh, there we go. Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I believe I have the floor. Is that right, Mr. Chair?
Yes, you do.
Yes.
Yes, you
Well,
do.
thank you. I am so delighted that we are together spiritually, technologically, if not physically. And I know your spirit's going to animate and inspire the legislature this year to greater glory. We think there's fantastic opportunities to advance the arc of the moral universe that Reverend King spoke of. And one of the reasons is we have such an amazing group of Black legislators this year. To have 8 representatives and 1 senator, this is a fantastic opportunity to push the wheel of justice forward. I look at the work they're doing. Melanie Morgan, we're working with her to do the Juneteenth state holiday. We're working with Representative Edmund on the independent investigation. John Lovick, Jesse Johnson have always been there. And then we've got 5 new members that I know are going to do great work. So thank you for this community to giving us such a crop of inspirational people. I've already got to know them a little bit, and their advocacy and eloquence is really impressive. So we should be very optimistic this year that good things can happen in Olympia. Now, I spoke of inspiration. I can't start my comments without sharing the inspiration that I felt at Joe Biden's inauguration. And I think he did a good job, but of course, the person who really did a fantastic job was Amanda Gorman. And I just want to quote what she said, because I think it sets the stage for what we're doing this year in Olympia. She said, "We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace. And the norms and notions of what is just is not always justice." I love that line. "And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished." I got to tell you, that last line, to say that our nation isn't broken, it's simply unfinished, to me, really spoke to me. And it means that we can continue the process of finishing a more just society this year in Olympia. So I want to thank you for being here. And one of the reasons, I know this sounds like an irony, but the door of justice is open in so many ways, unfortunately, because of the tragedies of George Floyd. In other words, the consciousness of the nation has been raised. The opportunity for justice to advance has been raised, not just in criminal justice, but in education, in housing, in employment, in training, in so many different venues. And so this year, I think we ought to be really ambitious in what we can do in improving opportunities, reducing inequality, reducing the racist inclinations throughout our society. So I just think this is a tremendous opportunity for us this year in Olympia. I just want to start the conversation here about our work in the criminal justice system. You know, when I found out that the investigation of the Manny Ellis tragedy was not being done appropriately, as you know, I switched that on my own notion to the Washington State Patrol to bring an additional independent professional investigation that is now going on. I think it is going to bear fruit. We need to get full independent investigations, but that is not enough. We have to have a permanent independent investigatory system in the state of Washington. And I'm glad to be working with Representative Edelman and other legislators in making sure that we develop a permanent independent system investigation. So when there is police citizen violence, we know exactly what happened and we have credible investigations. I'm committed to that. I want to thank everyone in this call for your help in getting that bill to me across the finish line. We got other work to do, but I just want to highlight that because I know there's other issues we'll be talking about as well. But it's not just criminal justice. It's our economic issues. It's our healthcare issues. It's the disparity in our healthcare. Let me address this right now. We know we have to be super committed to reducing the disparities in our healthcare system. Now, I'm really glad that the Republicans have failed to repeal Obamacare, what Barack Obama brought to this nation. I'm glad that we are protecting, and I'm glad we have successfully protected it because it's done as much as anything in American history to reduce the disparities in healthcare. But we have our own work to do. We have work to do in our vaccine delivery system so that everyone gets access to this vaccine, this life-saving vaccine. And so we've been committed to that. We've done work. We got a lot more work to do. I'm pleased that we worked with the Urban League of Metro Seattle and the African American Health Board and 13 other Black serving media outlets and organizations to help with outreach, to share information about how this vaccine works. There's understandable reluctance in some parts of the Black community about this vaccine. And our job is to share scientific information so people can make an independent decision about their own health. Today, I'm making an announcement about a new $15 million fund that is organized philanthropy to support Black and other communities for information, transportation, and other health-related efforts around COVID so we can decrease the disparities in health. And I know these things can work. To some degree, they have. We are pleased with the steps we've taken to date. We know there's a lot more to do, but we have reduced some of the disparities. I'm pleased to say that we actually have a higher percentage of Black Washingtonians who have been vaccinated than they represent as a percentage of the eligible population. We've had 2.1% of the eligible population are Black, but we vaccinated 2.7% of all those vaccinations have been to the Black community. So that's just a step, but we know we got a lot more steps to take to continue on this road of justice in healthcare. I'm hoping that you can give us your advice too about how to share information with your community. We need your help. We need your advice. We want to follow your insights. You're the experts on this, not us. So the more free advice you can give us, the better. We love to have your suggestions in this regard. Now, the economy. We know that the economy has been rougher on the Black community than otherwise. And we have been trying to commit to helping in this regard. There's a variety of things we've done. We've done a $200 million grant program to businesses that has been dispersed through our business resiliency grants to organizations that support Black and other minority-owned businesses so they can apply for state, local, and federal resources. And we want to do everything we can to help these Black-owned and managed businesses survive COVID. We know that they've been hit hardest. I'm glad we're making progress. I'm glad we've moved ahead in our phases so we can open up more of our activity in restaurants and otherwise. But we've also got to help renters. We know the Black community has been hit harder than others. We know that home ownership is the lowest in the Black community, a long, long challenge for us. I'm glad we've issued our moratorium on evictions, but we got more work to do. So we're going to continue on this effort on making a very large fund to help with rental assistance. It'll end up helping both renters and lessors by seeing to it that help can be delivered for renters. We've already done tens of millions. I don't have the number right in front of me for rental assistance, but I'm working with a group of legislators to come up with another package in the tens of millions. And I know that the Black legislators are going to help lead this effort to really help people through this tough time. I also wanted to talk about the digital divide that we have experienced. That's been even more apparent during the remote learning that we've had. We had a historic investment of $365 million in equity. This included money to help in the digital divide and support our students with remote learning. It's helped. Now we have capital investments like the Asbury House in Hilltop and McKinney Center in Seattle to provide financial literacy and environmental justice. These are some things you might think are small, but I think they're a big deal. And I hope that we're going to continue working on this type of effort in this legislative session. I wanted to make a comment about education as I close. This has been a real challenge. When we started through this, we had very little knowledge of COVID, and our kids went into a remote learning environment. That was probably a good decision based on the information we have. But I think going forward, I'm hopeful that parents and students can be given options about how to move forward. I think some parents want to continue in the remote learning environment. I think many parents want to have their kids back at least partially in a in-school environment, maybe half time. I'm really hopeful that we can give more students options in this regard. And the reason I say this is we have learned a lot about schools and COVID than we knew a year ago. And what we've learned is that if we do things smart, wear masks, distance, spread the kids out by having them only in the classroom half time, we've demonstrated we're able to do this in a safe way. This has been quite clear. We have about 200,000 students today who are having on-site learning. And what we have found is we've had very, very minimal in-school transmission because the educators have been so good and the kids have been pretty good too. So as we go through the next steps, I am hopeful that we can give parents more options to suit their needs as we go forward. I think schools are moving in this direction to give them options, and I think that's a good thing. So I am really glad you're here in Olympia. I'm really glad we're going to move the arc of the moral universe forward, and I'm looking forward to signing some really good bills that I hope you'll attend. It might still be virtual, but it'll be just as fun in the good bills we're going to pass this year. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, working with you.
Mhm. Mhm.
At this time, I want to invite Ed Prince from the Commission African American Affairs to give us some greetings. Ed Prince, are you with us?
I am. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that we're here virtually for Legislative Day. I mean, this legislative session is unlike any we've ever had. So, of course, Legislative Day is like any time. I'm so happy. I've got a number of commissioners that are joining us for Legislative Day this year. I've got Pastor Kendricks from Spokane, Commissioner Sardinas from St. King County, and Dorian Waller from Tacoma that are here today. Commission's been really busy. We've got 3 priority areas: economic security, reimagining public safety, public health, and in those areas, we've been really working on the area of accountability this session. There are a number of bills that have been sponsored by legislators In fact, we sent out an alert on some of the bills. Today is our legislative cutoff. We're our first legislative cutoff, policy cutoff. We are happy to be here with you today and looking forward to legislative day as always. And looking forward to legislative day as always.
Thank you very much, Hey, Prince. Appreciate you continual support and continue coming on and addressing since we first started. At this time, I would like to present a wonderful woman. She's been very instrumental in all the work that we do as APRI. She's our leader. She's our mentor. And she's also our national president. So at this time, I want to present Madam President Cleola Brown, National President of the A. Philip Randolph Institute.
Oh, wow. I saw you peeping over at Vanessa's cheat sheet.
Hi.
Oh, I am, first of all, good morning, everyone. It is such a pleasure to see so many. While the governor was speaking, I was surfing your participants' sheets, and you have over 100 people on your call. And it is absolutely wonderful to see this kind of participation. Good friends, new friends I hope to see soon in real time. Miss Jo Lambert, I see you. I see you sitting there all fly, got your headband on and everything. Paul Benj, it's good to see you as always, for sure. I'm looking across the screen. I saw Brother Salisbury all laid out in his Sigma stuff. Randolph would be very proud of you, Phi Beta Sigma, man, for sure. And Sister Wilhelmina, you're my heart. You know that. Every time I see you, I see my sister Verlene, because the two of you repeat and repeat in good times and when y'all were doing troublesome things, you know. So it's always those reminders that makes the heart feel really, really good when you see the faces of people that you know and you love. Reverend Ashanti Wright, I saw you when I was surfing. There you are again. I see you. It's just amazing. I was looking for Guy on the screen somewhere. I did not see him. Guy Ashley, is he on?
I'm here. I'm here, Clay.
Oh,
I'm
wonderful.
here, Clay.
Thank you, because you know I always look to see where you are, whether it's on a screen or whether it's in person when we're all together, because it's important. It's called family, y'all.
Yeah, we
That's
all
who-
love you, Clay.
And I love you right back too. This feels so good this morning. It feels like Sunday as opposed to Monday because it feels just so right. And I don't know. I heard your governor talking about the ARC, and the one thing that did not get said is that that ARC must lean towards justice. And the justice that Dr. King was talking about was not just us being the ones that got, you know, pooped on, okay? But the justice that is the inalienable right of all of us. I talk a lot, but when I'm with family, I just have conversation. Your family, so we're gonna have just a few minutes of conversation here this morning. When folks ask me, well, what is APRI all about and what do we do? You know, Bayard Rustin said that this organization was being put together because what the country needed and what the labor movement needed was a whole group of angelic troublemakers, all right? Kind of similar to what John Lewis said, make good trouble. But Rustin started in the very beginning by talking about angelic troublemakers, which means that your faith is strong, but you know, Jesus wasn't exactly a quiet sit by the side and watch everything turn out just right. He was in there mixing it up, flipping tables, throwing money everywhere, telling people they were sinners and bad. And I mean, drinking a little wine too at the wedding, making more when it ran out. So these are real times with real issues, and we've got to be able to deal with it in a real way. So when Rustin talked about angelic troublemakers, that's what we do. We take a look at who we are and where we are and what it is that we do in order to make it bend towards justice. And the justice that we look for is the fairness. Governor Inslee was talking about some of the things that became real apparent during this pandemic. Yeah, folks got stripped naked this time. Because when everybody got on lockdown, you could see where the disparate treatment was and how different communities were impacted. And it came to the light real quick, fast, and in a hurry. And some poor folks that didn't realize they were poor, regardless of their color, that light came on too. That it's not just Black people that get hit, slam dunked, and all the rest. It's all of us that are hit by the economic constraints. Let me say this, it's troublesome still. Even after so many of the things that were wrong and disproportionately allocated were shown almost a year ago, many things have still not been addressed. A part of that is as we take a look at what's happening right now with our distribution of the vaccination, right? Let's start with that first and I'll work my way backwards. Well, I hear a lot of folks saying, well, Black folk don't want to go and take no vaccine. Well, there's a little history to that now. Because of the Tuskegee incident, a lot of folks had to slow up just a minute, but folks are dying at such a rate, that luxury is not there. The deal is watch and see how many drop before you go to the same place to go get your shot, okay? Because you got to go get your shot. There is no fooling around with this. This is a serious disorder. But then the question that needs to be raised is that access to getting the shot is the real problem in almost every state in this country. First, they tell you to go online. For some people, going online is going outside to hang the clothes, right? Because there is no broadband in a lot of communities. We don't know a whole lot about computers. And if there's no kids or grandkids or somebody, even Ray and them who live down the street that could come and show you how to surf the net, we are just out of luck. And what is more frustrating is when you can find your way to the telephone numbers that they give, they'll tell you at 10:30 at night that tomorrow morning there's going to be 1,500 vaccinations available in your community. Call starting at 9 o'clock. You start calling right at 9 o'clock, and at 9:05 they tell you all of those vaccination appointments have been given up, right? Well, lo and behold, when people got so frustrated after 5 and 6 weeks of camping out on the phone, they took a look at the communities where the vaccinations were being administered. Many of the shots and the areas and the separations according to categories eliminated a good share of communities like ours. They say 65 and older, some folk coming into that particular zip code because some areas did zip codes, right? I don't know what they did in Washington State, but y'all stop me when it doesn't apply to your area. Some said by age, 65 and older, or 75 and older, or someone who's a frontline worker, or this and this and this and this and this. All of the criteria laid out there. But when they took cameras down to the site, the categories that had been earmarked, the people going in and getting their shots didn't look anything like those folks. Could not get a confirmation, could not get their shots, could not do what was supposed to be an easy process or real access to an equalization of the medication. That's the big lie that's been trooping all over this country. But what does APRI do? We take the covers all the way off. We start talking about them. We tell them on TV, on the newspaper, through whatever social media platform we got. We don't have to say it pretty or dress it up with great big old words. They know when you call them out and it's wrong, it is just straight up wrong. And as long as we've been doing healthcare advocacy inside of APRI, the community knows who we are and they trust us for telling them the real deal and the truth. That's why we do what we do. That's how we do it, so that it's not a stranger coming into a community and telling folks something that they're halfway looking at them side-eyed about anyway. There are relationships. But many elected officials got smart after being called out about not adhering to what the criteria supposedly was. They have now begun to partner with churches, partnering with the facility where people go with a sense of trust. And if your community pastors are not getting any phone calls, I want y'all to turn into some angelic troublemakers. You're going to be in the house of the Lord anyway. Start raising sand. You got permission. Go ahead and tell them my pastor has a whole congregation that's got some nurses in it, that's got some healthcare workers in it, that's got some folks that will volunteer and help to get these vaccinations done. No one is going to make sure that you get yours but you. So turn into that angelic troublemaker. Rustin coined the phrase, but for this organization's namesake, A. Philip Randolph, he was the gentle giant, standing 6'4", big baritone voice. That was a bad brother. Walked smooth like he was gliding on air. Wasn't bad looking either, sisters. Let me tell you the truth now. But what he did was make things real. He talked about how is it that we formulate what it is that we need. He did not allow inside the organization a bunch of whiners and complainers and all the rest of it. He said, we are an organization of doers. And if we're not doing it right, let's talk with one another instead of talking about each other. Because nothing grows out of discord. What you get then is a whole bunch of mix up and all the rest of it. And like that lady said, that infamous lady from St. Louis, ain't nobody got time for that. But what we have time for is structured organization, and that's who we are, and that's what we do. People talk a lot to us again about, well, what about elections? We can't endorse and we can't do that. No, we cannot endorse because we're a 501c3. We are nonpartisan, but I tell you this, we are particular. We know who will fight for those things that impact us the most. And in doing so, we have to remain an organization that speaks clearly about our principles, about our objectives, and about our mission. And brothers and sisters, don't be one of those that run to the light, because they'll love you today and hate you tomorrow, trust me. Even the Hollywood stars last for about 15 minutes worth of fame. This is the long haul organization right here. This organization is one that lays the roots digging deep in the ground and make sure that we don't plant the stuff just for ourselves. When you become an APRI activist, you are an automatic mentor. Your role and your job and the excitement comes out of pulling someone along, creating a space for someone else to get the energy that you have. I mean, after all, Randolph was a Sigma man, and I see some Sigmas on the call. If you think for 2 seconds about the principles of being Phi Beta Sigma, you'll know what it calls for. The pride, the dignity, the respect, the dedication, and the loyalty to organization and to framing it out so that it makes a difference. But all of those things, I could go on and on about who we are and what we do. But I wanted to congratulate you all more than anything this morning, because during this time, your chapter remained active. During this time, when many chapters just sat and say, oh my God, we're locked down and we're not doing anything. During this time, you are remaining up front, carrying your name, not being swallowed up by a lot of other folks like in the past. They come to APRI because we have boots on the ground. But when the time for the credit, you don't see APRI mentioned anywhere in the mix of nothing. Now, when I lie, you tell me. But you guys work hard. You always have. That's how I get to know your name. That's how I get to know your work. That's how I know the worth of good, strong chapters. And you are it. I'm so proud of what you've done during the 2020 election. But I'm so proud of what you do each and every day. Sister Danielle is going to be on with you, I know, because she's absolutely monitoring how this
Where you going to work?
newfangled stuff works, all right? And Bishop, I see you. But what we have to do is make sure that when you are bringing somebody along, you give them space to do what they do. Other than that, you're using it. And then you toss them to the side. Don't do that. Young people are smart. They know what you know before you tell them, because they watch what you do, not what you say. And you've got some young people that really need to be pulled into the fold by giving them some space to do their due. And I hope that's something that you all will do a lot more of. I know I've been talking for a little while, and whenever I see Gabriel kind of moving around and Vanessa disappear, I know that it's time for me to hush up and just listen to you all for a while. So I'm at least smart to know that when it's time to say, I love you, I will say it. So I'm saying to you all, I love you all. I appreciate all that you do. I can't wait to see you, because this Zoom stuff is good for a hot minute. But what I really love is when I can see you and get my hugs, because you know how I am. If I don't know your name, I'm going to hug you anyway. And then you can go talk about me if you want to. That's all right. I already had my hug. But that's how we are. APRI, we are family. We will always be family, and nothing can do anything to that but us. So stay strong. I will stay on with you as long as I can. And you can ask me anything once I shut up that you choose to. But I don't know. I'm under the direction of our president, President Powell, to see what he wants me to do next. I just wanted an opportunity to say, hey, and that I loved you, and I miss y'all so much.
We love you back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Clay. We love you.
Thank you
so much for talking in and speaking with us. At this point, we're going to bring in James Bible.
Well, do we have
James Bible?
James Bible with us right now?
I don't see them
James
in your
Bible?
participant. I don't see them in your participant list, President.
Is he says he's having a problem logging in.
Because they didn't.
This meeting has a maximum of 100 participants, I'm hearing from folks. I don't know who the administrator is, but if you can increase so more people can join, but it's people that can't join after 100.
We're not at the 100 mark. We've had some people to leave the room, so we've got plenty of room for folks to come in, but I don't see there being any type of notifications in either way.
So at this point, Andy Billing available?
He's in the other room.
He's in the other room?
We have Jonette.
Okay, so at this point, we're going to call Jonette to have a discussion about police accountability. Jonette, are you here with us?
I am here. I am Sean Fuhr's aunt. Sean was just bear with me because I wasn't.
Take your time, sister.
I wasn't planning on being emotional, but Sean Fuhr was murdered by the Seattle Police Department on April 29th, 2020. He was shot in his mouth while holding his daughter. They didn't even give him a chance to surrender. They posted it all on TV like he was a villain. They changed the narrative of who he was. And that made people think that he was just this monster. But if you're holding a baby in your hand, you don't have a gun. You didn't even give him enough time to surrender. As soon as they came around, you got SWAT officers hitting the corner. You're going to say stop and shoot at the same time. They didn't give him enough time to surrender. And so my family have been dealing with this. So we've been kind of, in disbelief. And I've been spearheading everything and, you know, doing these protests and things like that, like I'm outraged. You know, I am emotional, but I'm angry. And sometimes, you know, people tend to be passive, and I'm not a passive woman. So sitting here and allowing this stuff to fester inside of me makes me more angry. And I still try to process it and release it. So somebody just get the gavel if I start talking too much, please. Because this is like really, this is my passion. This is my drive. I don't sleep. I think about him every day. And so my sister, I only have one sister. She can't do things, you know, and I'm here doing it for my family. And so even being here is really important, you know. And I thank the Washington Coalition on Police Accountability for allowing me just to even have the floor in this situation. But being in a situation where the police aren't being held accountable, you've taken over a year coming April 29th. It'd be a year, no indictment, no nothing. And you expect people to sit quietly and accept what you're doing, not even just to my nephew, but to my people. That grieves me. And this is nothing new under the sun. They've been doing this to our ancestors, and they're still doing it. The police have been getting away with this for eons. This has been the history of the Black community and the police officers for history. I've watched too many stories. I've heard too many TV shows, too many stories from my grandmother. And it infuriates me. So it's really important that the officers are being held accountable. We have to begin to put sanctions in place so this stuff does not continue to occur in our communities. Who's going to protect our children? We already deal with Black on Black crime, but then you got the police officers killing our people. Who's going to protect our children? Are we supposed to sit there and accept that and allow that to take place? I don't think so, because everybody's not passive. Some people are troublemakers. Some people don't want to sit back quietly and watch the legislation decide what they're going to do, whether they're going to indict this officer, and his name is Officer Noah Zek. He's a SWAT officer. So,
Jonette?
Yes.
My apologies. We really appreciate you sharing your story. All of our hearts go out to you, and we want to have a more in-depth conversation with you and the group about your lost loved one. So we're going to have a breakout session where there'll be another space where you can share your story more in depth. I don't want to be disrespectful. My heart.
That's fine. Well, I said get the gavel, so
and I'm gonna tell you this. My family has personally experienced police brutality. Federal police beat my son into a coma 2 years ago. So my heart goes out to you. And we would love to move you to another space where you can continue to, we can talk longer about this. But we have to run, and we're behind on our schedule. And again, I apologize. So if that's okay.
That's okay, that's fine.
Do we have James Bible in the room yet?
I just tried to get James, I texted him to let him know, but it's the Zoom link has reached capacity. So he's not able to get in.
It's not.
We are looking at this. We're not at capacity right
now. We'll figure it out. We'll get it.
Something is going on, but it could be some technical difficulty, but we're not at capacity right now. And he's have space to get in if he wants to.
Okay.
We'll figure it out. Thank you. Yes.
Well, are we moving her, or she wanna?
We have the Senator Jenkins waiting to.
So we're gonna be moving you also to the other room. And we're gonna bring on Senator Jenkins. Senator Jenkins, are you here with us right now?
I am here.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, and I apologize that I'm going to have to start off with apologies here. I'm already I was scheduled to come on at 11, and I am already late for an 11:15 meeting that I have. Today is policy cutoff day, as you all know. Very busy day. It does happen that I'm not a senator. I am Speaker of the House of Representatives, and I'm just going to jump into some of the policy work that we're doing right now. I came on hearing some of the pain and anguish from Ms. McKinney, and I want you to know that the House has been working a lot with families and will continue to work with families and the leadership of our Black Members Caucus, which is the largest it's ever been in the history of Washington State, to move police accountability bills forward. So let me just jump in, and I'm just going to talk for a couple minutes and then going to have to hop off, unfortunately. But I think we have moved nearly all of our police accountability bills in the House forward. We're working really strongly with the Senate on these two, but we've moved two bills off the floor of the House, one by John Lovick, which is about impeachment disclosures and making sure that that defense attorneys get the Brady information, the impeachment disclosures early on, so that they can prepare defense appropriately. Also, Representative Ramos's bill to authorize the state auditor to audit the use of force investigations that are conducted by law enforcement. Those moved off the floor last week, but all of the other bills are moving. Representative Johnson has a number of good bills. The police tactics bill, which you all have maybe already heard some about, that's House Bill 1054, is in the Rules Committee. So we don't go back on the floor of the House until the 23rd. We're right now planning our floor action on that and other bills. Representative Ty has House Bill 1202, which creates a state level civil cause of action in these kinds of cases. Representative Johnson also has House Bill 1203, which establishes funding for local community oversight boards. And then Representative Entenmann's Bill 1267, which is the independent investigations bill. It is also has also moved out of committee. And finally, Representative Johnson has another bill which is about the permissible uses of force by law enforcement. So it was really a revision to Initiative 940. That's House Bill 1310. So we have a number on police accountability. I could talk to you at length about the other categories of, we have equity bills moving forward in all of our primary 4 topic areas in the House. We this year are looking at moving bills forward that address the COVID-19 pandemic. Secondly, that help with economic recovery. Third, that deal with the existential threat of climate change. And fourth, that deal with equity. And we are also using an equity lens to look at all the other bills that we pass off of the House floor to assess whether or not they advance equity. Our goal this year, it's the first year we've done it. We will not be perfect at it, but we're going to get better and better. Our goal this year is to make sure that we are doing nothing to harm equity and that we are doing work to advance equity. So again, I'm sorry I have to pop off so quickly, but I will look forward to hearing from you all and continue to engage with our Black Members Caucus on priorities. So and it's great. Honestly, it was great to see that there are more people attending this event than you have Zoom capacity for. That's the kind of problem I like to see. So good on you. And I wish I could stay for questions, but feel free to send them off to my office if you've got them.
Thank you very much, Speaker of the House, Jenkins. And we appreciate you taking the time. Next, we want to welcome Department of Correction Deputy Secretary Julie Martin. Are you here?
I am here. Good morning to all of you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity and the invitation to speak on behalf of the Department of Corrections. I'm Julie Martin. I'm the Deputy Secretary. If you don't understand the structure of the department, the secretary who heads up the department, that's Steve Sinclair. Steve is going to be retiring from the department effective May 1st. So if you have an opportunity or you know Steve, please wish him well. I'm the Deputy Secretary, and I will continue to oversee the operations of the department, which I have responsibility for now. There was a few questions that were sent in, and before I start with that, I just want to let you know that, as you know, it's been over a year now that we've had our Emergency Operations Center deployed because of this pandemic in all 12 of our facilities. A year's gone by that we know that loved ones have not been able to have in-person visitation and only being done by video. That is not as good as being able to touch and hug your loved ones, and we understand that and are trying to do everything in our power to open that up as soon as it's safe to do so. We work with the other 24/7 facilities to have conversation on when that can happen. I do want to say, though, I'm very proud of the incarcerated population for their continued resiliency as we continue to discuss with many of the individuals who are incarcerated on how we continue to improve our actions in reducing COVID-19 within the facilities and things that we can do as much as we can to normalize operations again. So specifically, what are we doing to protect those who are incarcerated from COVID? A few things. We have, if you haven't visited our website, and I won't mention all of them, we have all of our medical protocols and our protocols that we use in COVID. But we continue to work with all of our staff and incarcerated individuals to cover their mouths, social distancing as best you can in a correctional system. We work on those who become symptomatic, to isolate them as quickly as we can. We make sure that we're testing them as well as those individuals in quarantine and taking appropriate measures. We have what we are doing with serial testing that we've had since October of this year, that we serial test all of our staff to make sure that if they are positive for COVID, that they're not allowed to come in. So once a week, we do that with every one of our staff going into our prison facilities. Even myself, if I were to enter a facility, I would be having a COVID test before I'm allowed to go in there. We continue to do our individuals continued screening where we're asking questions, we're taking temperatures, and we're always working in conjunction with the CDC. Our medical protocols were ones that the CDC started to review early on a year ago. We were leading the front on that with what we needed to do to protect our individuals. We also have seen a significant decline in the population right now within our prison facilities. A little over a year and a half ago, we were well over 17,000 individuals incarcerated. And as of this morning, we're just shortly or shy of a little over 14,000 people who are incarcerated right now. So we continue to see that population decrease, which is good for us to continue to have separation of more than 6 feet, be able to do as good a job as we can for those who we need to quarantine and put into isolation. The one thing, though, I do want to point out, as you may or may not know, currently our population, as far as demographics, represent 18% of those individuals are Black people in our population. Now, we don't sentence, of course, who comes into the Department of Corrections, but that is an representation of the Black population in Washington State. Right now, that's just a little over 4%. And so we did some looking to see who has been contracting COVID. And right now, we have about 17% of the confirmed cases in our system are those of Black people. We continue to work closely with our correctional ombuds. We continue to have conversations with tier representatives. We continue to work closely with Department of Health on any additional things that we may be able to do to improve our practices for reducing COVID within the system. So let me move on to your second question that you had asked us, and that's restoring voting rights when exiting prison. So I don't know if you know, currently right now, there's House Bill 1078 that automatically would restore voter eligibility for all those who are not serving a sentence of total confinement under the jurisdiction of Department of Corrections. The bill sponsored by over 41 representatives and was heard on January 21st and is currently in committee at the State Government and Tribal Relations and will be referred to the House for Rules for review. We are in full support of restoring voting rights to those who are leaving incarceration. And as such, we've testified on the bill that we are in full support by both our reentry and our community corrections staff. We hope that this will be passed this year, and we encourage all of us to make sure that we're doing everything we can to advocate for this bill. We understand that, as we saw in Georgia and we know in our own state, democracy thrives and is survived based on participation when all can be a part of the legislative process. So thank you for that question. The third question was, there was a question that we've been asked about, will we be following Portland, Oregon's lead to decriminalize
You're on mute. Sorry, you're on mute.
I don't know how that happened. So did you hear my response to the Oregon question?
No, you cut off right after reading the question.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm not sure how that happened. So thanks for bringing that to my attention. So the question again was Portland, Oregon's lead to decriminalize hard drugs and offer people who struggle with addiction. So I want to say that we at DOC feel that we're probably the largest mental health hospital, if you will, within the state. And unfortunately, so many people with mental health issues become criminally and justice involved individuals and come under our care. I am very thankful that the governor has supported additional mental health counselors for prisons in his budget. We look forward, I'm hopeful that that's going to be added so we can add more people to give them the care that they need. We continue to provide substance abuse for those individuals who are incarcerated. We have therapeutic communities for those individuals who are incarcerated. And if they're subject to a term of supervision when they're released, we also continue that when they're released out into the community. We are hopeful and we look forward to the progress that Oregon's going to make on this. But again, it just got passed February of this year. And we'll be continuing to do any research that we can on this. We'll encourage our legislative partners to continue to review this process. And we'll reach out to our Oregon DOC partners to see how this has been working for them as well. And look forward to continued conversations on that. I am mindful though of time here. And so in closing, I just want to say that as I recently watched Just Mercy, that Brian Stevenson had said the true measure of our character is how we treat the poor, the disfavored, the accused, and the incarcerated and the condemned. And I want to say that we at the Department of Corrections feel very strongly about that. In continued conversations and work with our first Equity Inclusion Administrator, Dr. Karen Johnson, she consistently reminds us that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And what we mean by that is just setting strategy alone is not going to change the culture, and especially a culture of corrections. And we are partnering to transform our culture into one that is equitable, diverse, and inclusive, and respect, and is anti-racist. So we continue on with listening sessions. We are committed to improving how we work with our staff and incarcerated individuals of color. And I am very honored to be here and representing the Department of Corrections and open this up for any questions that you may have of me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It looks like now we have James Bible in the building, so we are going to welcome him back with Davita Briscoe and Jonetta. She's still.
Thank you, Ms. White. Thank you for the speaker.
Do we have James Bible in the room?
Hello.
How you doing, Brother James?
I'm doing well, brother. How are you?
Great, great. It's our pleasure to see you and being able to take the time to join us today. We appreciate that.
Absolutely.
You got the floor, my brother.
Thank you. Black Lives Matter. They matter today. They matter especially today. If you marched in June, July, August, you faced pepper spray and bad words, you were in a space where you stood supporting the families of so many who have been victims of police violence, then you know and you understand that Black lives just don't matter when you're on the street marching or when you're designing your sign, but they especially matter right now on African American Legislative Day. They especially matter during legislative session, because marching has its value. Taking a stand against oppression in the streets has its value. Standing up and saying that something is wrong has its absolute value. But the details get worked out now. The details. Sometimes those that are against accountability sit silently and they wait until legislative session to fundamentally maintain and perpetuate the inequity that is present in our society. And we stand today in a place where we have a tremendous opportunity to do something different than perhaps we've done before, or than perhaps we've done in a long time. There is remarkable legislation that has been brought forward in this term. Deborah Intiman, I want to personally thank you for the work that you're doing in relation to independent investigation of police officers and prosecution of such officers if and when appropriate. And there are certainly times when it is appropriate, and there's certainly times when our pleas have been ignored. I have said to so many that on March 3rd, 2020, a Black man was lynched in Tacoma, Washington. As he was walking home from a corner store after having played the drums at his church, something that he did 3 times a week, he was approached by officers. Those officers took their door and slammed it into his body, threw him on the ground, beat him repeatedly. When his hands were up in the air like this, one of their arms was around their neck, around his neck, and they tased him repeatedly. They tased him repeatedly. And once he was on his stomach, they hogtied him in a most humiliating fashion. And as he was saying, "I can't breathe, sir," they put a spit mask over his head, further suffocating him. And then they stood around and watched him breathe his last breath, just the way so many others in the past had dangled from trees. Nothing was known of this incident for about 3 months. Nothing was known except for the police officer's narrative, which was that he was dangerous, that he had approached and hit their car, that he was screaming at them, that he had said he had warrants, that maybe he was a car prowler, that he had picked them up and body slammed them into the ground, and that they had no choice but to defend their own lives. And they almost got away with it. And they still might actually ultimately get away with it. Thankfully, after pushing and pushing and pushing, we were able to locate independent witnesses, some of whom shockingly had videos, and were eager to tell us that nothing had been done wrong by Manuel Ellis, that he was simply walking home when he was called over to a police car standing there. And then for no reason, the officers started to do what they did. That at no point were they body slammed. That one young lady right behind them was screaming, "Please stop, don't do this to him. It's too dangerous, stop, I'm so scared. If you're gonna arrest him, just arrest him." The next witness that we came up with was actually a pizza delivery person who had filmed a portion of it, and he also said that Manuel Ellis had done nothing wrong. And he filmed it. He filmed it as well. And then we ran into somebody that had doorbell ring video of the incident. And the police department actually had this video on March 4th. And what it captured was Manuel Ellis saying, "I can't breathe, sir." And the officer's response of, "Shut the F up." So while they were perpetuating this false narrative, while they were making all of these claims, they knew what Manuel Ellis's final words were. In fact, I would venture to say that the top brass of the Tacoma Police Department and the Pierce County Sheriff's Office knew what Manuel Ellis's last words were, knew what his experience was, had access to the ring video. We know because the person that got the video told us that the police had picked it up the very next day. And they gave us a copy too, months later. So we pushed for an independent investigation of Manuel Ellis and the incident and what happened. And the Pierce County Prosecutor's Office fought hard, tooth and nail, to keep it. The Pierce County Sheriff's Office fought hard, tooth and nail, to keep control of it. And the only reason why we have a chance at prosecution today is because we were able to convince the governor that there needed to be independent investigation. And that the state attorney general was the entity that needed to prosecute this. And we'll see what ultimately happens, but there is a bill in our legislature right now that would make it so that the Attorney General's office ultimately had the word in relation to investigation and prosecution of police officers that commit wrongs such as what was done to Manuel Ellis. It would grant them concurrent jurisdiction, and if the local jurisdiction failed to prosecute, well then the Attorney General could. It's not perfect, but it's definitely something that we need. We need it because of Charlena Lyles. We need it because of Sean Furr, shot in the face while holding his baby. We need it because of Manuel Ellis. We need it because a young man in King County, in sheriff's office, who had just graduated from high school, was shot and killed by sheriffs while holding a pencil. There's been no prosecution of those officers. There's work to be done. But we also need to be focused on the conditions that lead to inequity on street corners, between law enforcement and the people that encounter them. And some of that is equity stuff that some sometimes think is unrelated. We have to push for affirmative action changes in the state of Washington. Equity in employment and educational opportunities. Helping others to see the humanity in all people is of critical importance. And we're fighting for it. And so many are pushing for it, but we're not there yet. So thank you to those that were here in May, June, July, August, September, marching, making your voices known, saying we won't stand down. Let's just make sure we're bringing everybody along in this legislative session because we need it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother James.
Absolutely.
Next, we're going to hear from Davita Briscoe.
Hi, my name is Davita Briscoe.
Good
I'm the
morning.
Good morning. I'm the acting director for Not This Time. I'm also a member of the Washington Coalition for Police Accountability. We have been working on bills for the last 6 months, prioritizing discriminatory police tactics, House Bill 1054, 1202, giving people the right to sue police. Johnson is leading for 1203, which is community oversight boards, and then House Bill 1267, which is independent investigations. My brother, Shay Taylor, was killed 2016. He was murdered by Seattle police officers in the North End. He had his hands up. He was complying with officers' commands, and he was shot and killed within 9 seconds. He was handcuffed, turned over. Police did not intervene to give him any medical aid. He bled out. They didn't even call paramedics, and he bled for over 8 minutes. I want to mention the names of Charlena Lyles. I want to mention Tommy Lay. I want to mention Giovanni Joseph McDade. I want to mention Manny Ellis. I want to mention all of the people who have died at the hands of police: Sean Fuhr, Jackie Sawyers, Billy Langford, Benny Branch. All of these families have still not gotten justice. Benny Branch was killed in Tacoma, Washington. He was shot in front of his mother while she was screaming for police to give him first aid. The officer stood over him until he took his last breath. That family still has not received justice. The officers are still working. So I've been pushing for police accountability on top of my own grief for these families. We support families. We push for independent investigations with Initiative 940. We push for de-escalation training. We push for mandatory mental health training with Initiative 940, but I know that training is not enough to wipe out white supremacy and racism. So we pushed a little bit further with House Bill 1310 to make a statewide standard for requiring officers to de-escalate and to use of force as a last resort and only when it's necessary. We have got to stop holding hands with our officers, with law enforcement, and push for more accountability. And again, I keep pushing, and I work 24 hours a day around the clock doing this work, supporting families who have been impacted by police violence, amplifying our voices. We put on marches, we protest. But after the protesting and after the marching, we have got to push for legislation and push for more statewide standards that will change police conduct, misconduct, and get justice for these families. Our communities are over-policed and harassed. We're criminalized. And what their officers walk away with is saying that they feared for their lives. We have continued and continue to keep pushing. And I just want to join our community in learning more about these bills, contacting your representatives, testifying, signing up to testify to ensure that we have in place the accountability and the justice that these families need. We have 18 families that have signed up with Washington Coalition for Police Accountability. That's all I think that's all I have to say. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we're gonna hear from. Thank you. Next, we're gonna hear from Senator. So we don't move. You see.
At this time, I want to bring on
Department of Transportation's Secretary Roger Miller.
Good morning. You can hear me okay?
Yes, morning.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for inviting me to join you today. It's an honor to be here. As many of you know, I've been working within our agency and with our national partners to address and root out systemic racism within the transportation sector and reaffirm our commitment to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and other laws that need to be enforced. While we've made some progress, there's much work to be done before every person feels included as an equal in the American dream. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the progress we're making in the transportation space. At the Washington State DOT, you've had my longstanding commitment to advance racial justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in transportation. It's a key element of our strategic plan. We have 3 goals: inclusion, our workforce, and something we call practical solutions. But inclusion is very important to us. We have expanded our Office of Equal Opportunity and integrated civil rights staff into every region of the state of Washington, every aspect of our organization. And everyone at the Washington State DOT knows that civil rights is not the role of the Office of Equal Opportunity. Civil rights is the role of every employee at the agency. And OEO are subject matter experts and facilitators of making sure that happens. We strive to have an inclusive workforce. We strive to have a workforce whose employees reflect the population of Washington State. And since I've been secretary, our hiring has done that. We've been working very hard to diversify our business spend. We do a lot with disadvantaged businesses on our federal contracts, and we have taken, I think, some really, really critical strides forward on our state-funded work I'll talk about here in a little bit. So we're working to create wealth in the Black community. We're also working to create opportunities on our contracts for young men and women to enter the construction workforce, which pays well and provides stability, benefits, the opportunity for retirement and the like. On all of our contracts, we require 15% of the hours worked to be performed by apprentices. And we track our apprentice hours on our contracts. 43% of the apprentice hours that are worked on Washington State DOT contracts are worked by women and people of color. 32% of the apprentice hours were performed by members of the African American community. So we're creating an opportunity for people of color and women to enter the construction workforce. We're creating an opportunity for businesses owned by Black Washingtonians to participate in our business spend. We're doing a lot there. On the state side, to increase participation, we developed our state-funded diversity roadmap, which was a first amongst state agencies and has been adopted statewide by all of the agencies. It's a part of meeting our commitment to you. When I first came on board, Initiative 200 was put in my face. I said, we got to do better than this. And working with the governor's office and working with the attorney general's office, we developed a roadmap to participation, a roadmap to justice, equity, and diversity in our construction spend. We started by documenting that the disparity exists. You know it, I know it, we needed to document it because at some point we're going to wind up in court and I want to win. So we started with the voluntary measures. We developed with the construction industry and the consulting community a capacity building mentorship program, which enabled majority-owned firms to mentor disadvantaged businesses, businesses owned by Black men and women. And we partnered with the Business Impact Northwest, the Verity Credit Union, the Harborstone Credit Union, and BECU to offer loans to proteges participating in this program to start their business. We launched our fourth cohort in August of 2020. We've had 86 protege firms become a part of our construction community through this program. It's making great progress, but it's not making enough. While it is helping the individuals who participated, we're not seeing our construction spend rise far enough and fast enough for our satisfaction, certainly not your satisfaction. So I've decided that we will be implementing an enforceable small and veterans business enterprise program later this spring, which will require as a condition of contract award that a certain percentage of the work go to small businesses and veterans businesses. Every minority and women-owned business is by definition a small business. So we're going to see if that raises the bar. And if that doesn't raise participation, the next step in our program is an enforceable, at time of contract award, minority, women, and veterans business enterprise program. The roadmap is laid out. We're at the second step in that path. We will get there. Our goal is to have Black-owned businesses and other businesses owned by people of color participate in our construction activity to the extent that they're available in the community, and to grow that availability in the community to, again, create an opportunity for people to create some wealth and distribute that wealth in the community. Another thing we're doing in terms of bringing people, young people, into construction as an industry, as a trade, as an opportunity, is a pre-apprenticeship support services program called PASS. It was established in the 2015 legislative session. Then Senator, now Congresswoman Jayapal, was responsible for that. And the various caucuses in the legislature have done a lot to put money into that program. We get about $1 million annually, and there are some efforts underway to put more in there to increase the entry of women and people of color and other disadvantaged individuals into the construction trades. We've assisted close to 1,400 individuals to date. 14% of them were Black. And our goal is to provide bus fare, lunch money, whatever it takes to enable an individual to get through a pre-apprenticeship program and get into the construction trades with a job that pays well and benefits. I think we've made a lot of progress. We have a lot left to do, but together we can continue to make a difference in the lives of all the people we work for. We've taken this effort to the national level. I sit on the boards of the Western Association of State Transportation Officials and the American Association of State Transportation Officials. And WashDOT sponsored, and in partnership with colleagues around the country, my friend, the Secretary of the Louisiana DOT and the Illinois DOT and the California DOT, we got resolutions adopted unanimously by all of the state DOTs around the country that acknowledge that past actions by state DOTs have disproportionately negatively affected minority neighborhoods and people of color, and that the legacy of those past actions continues today in disparities around the country. We've committed to holding ourselves accountable for engaging in the vital work of advancing racial equity, and we've strengthened our agency's commitment nationwide to the values found in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to be done. I really, truly appreciate the support this community provides to us and the gentle and sometimes deservedly not so gentle nudge you give us to get off the dime and make things happen. So thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And if there's time, I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. I believe we decided if any question, we'll forward to your office. But we appreciate the time.
Great. Thank you again. Take care.
Have a tight agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we're gonna welcome Carl Ingram. He's gonna sing a song for us so we can be motivated for the next presentation.
Hi. How's everyone doing?
Good.
I won't be for you long.
Hey, Paul.
I'll be singing the Black National Anthem for you guys this morning. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that our dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory. Let us march on till victory. Let us march on till victory is won. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Yeah, for
At this time, I would like to move to our next segment, which will be presented by Black Minority Caucus, led by the chair, Representative Taylor. Representative Taylor, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for being here and hosting the legislators of the Black Members Caucus. I am State Representative Juvenile Taylor, and I serve the 30th Legislative District in the Federal Way area, and I'm serving as chair of the Black Members Caucus. I am so honored to be here today for the Seattle chapter of the A. Philip Randolph Institute's 22nd annual Charles Rolland African American Legislative Day. Congratulations to APRI and all of you for this amazing show of dedication and commitment to advancing social and economic justice of the Black community. 22 years of dedication to hosting this event is a long time. A lot has changed, but a lot is still the same for the Black community. One thing that has changed is the number of Black lawmakers we now have, and that's a good thing. Only 25 people have served in the legislature in in its history, including 9 Black lawmakers serving now. We nearly doubled in size in just this past election alone. The BMC can take the lessons we learned from APRI and other Black-led organizations throughout Washington state and organize and build a stronger coalition. It wasn't always that way though. And I want to acknowledge a few of the Black legislators who came before us. And I'm thinking about William Owen Bush, who first served in the very first legislature all the way back in 1889. His bill created the school that eventually became Washington State University. I'm sure there's some Cougars in the House. You can thank Representative Bush. Then there's Representative Charles Stokes, who passed the Civil Rights Omnibus Bill all the way back in 1957. And that's when Washington said that you cannot discriminate against someone applying for a job because they're Black, or get a room in a hotel because they're Black, or looking to rent an apartment because they're Black. We can't forget Representative Peggy Joan Maxey, who passed the Landlord-Tenant Act and was the first Black woman elected to the House of Representatives. That bill was the first time the state had said that landlords had obligations to their tenants and said about the remedies if a landlord or a tenant failed to meet up to their responsibilities. When these folks were in office, most of them were the only Black person on the floor of the House or Senate. Washington Black lawmakers have been around since the beginning of our state. And we see your excitement, the Black community, in this history-making moment. Thanks to your hard work, we are showing how valuable your voices, our voices are, and how we are needed at the decision-making table. As you know, the past is present. As Black Washingtonians, we know the fight must continue to bring racial justice, economic promise, and the liberation of Black lives denied to so many because of the remnants of slavery and Jim Crow discrimination. Your voices are critical to ensuring that the state recovers from the pandemic with inclusive policies and fully confronts racial inequities rooted in anti-Blackness. As you know, the pandemic revealed what we already knew as a community: the disproportionate impact on us as through the health and well-being of our community. The collective lived experiences of Black lawmakers represents the varied experiences of the Black community. Collectively, we are working parents, grandparents, sons and daughters, aunties and uncles, caregivers, the married, unmarried, LGBTQ. We are your neighbors. Resiliently, we are elected officials who have personally experienced and overcame challenges in our own lives, from surviving foster care, homelessness, domestic violence, loss of a business, and discrimination in the workplace and beyond. We have worked in professions in corporate America and owned small businesses, as educators and nonprofit leaders, as law enforcement, and as attorneys. We are veterans who proudly serve our country. We are deeply connected to you, the Black community. And I look forward to hearing from all of you today as we continue this legislative session, and we have some hard work ahead of us, but I know we are all up to the task. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Representative Jamila Taylor, who is also represent my district, the 30th district. At this time, Representative, do you mind presenting the other members of your Black Members Caucus?
Mute. I was on mute. So I see a number of them on the line. I'm not sure if everyone has made it, so I will just go in the order that I started with, and I will try to find the rest of them as they come on. So if we have Representative Lovick, Entenmann, and Representative Morgan, if you could unmute yourself. I see Representative Entenmann. Could you go ahead and start, and we'll try to find Representative Lovick.
Thank you. It is my understanding that Representative Lovick is having a hard time getting into the space because there may be a limit on the number of people to participate. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Deborah Entenmann, and I represent the 47th Legislative District, which are the cities of Kent, Auburn, and Covington. I come to you today to talk to you specifically about some of the bills that I am proposing for this legislative session, and some of the bills that I think are important that I am not sponsoring, but I would hope that you will follow and lend your voice in support of. I have been working with the Police Accountability Work Group, or Task Force, that was put together after the unfortunate death of George Floyd, and after we had learned of the unfortunate police brutality that led to the death of Manuel Ellis. We have been working since March of last year, it's almost a year now, time sure does fly, on making sure that Washington State has a public safety system that is equitable for everyone in Washington State, whether you live in Prosser, Washington, whether you live in Kitsap County, whether you live on the East Hill of Kent, or in downtown Seattle. The first bill that I was able to have heard was the bill for independent investigations. This bill was put together because of the unnecessary use of police violence in our state. And the entire community needs to be able to trust not only the police, but the prosecutors. And the only way to do that is if we have an independent investigative body. If this bill is passed, we will set up 10 regional investigative teams statewide that will come in when the police use deadly force. They will take over the investigation of the event. And we hope from that, with the passage of our independent prosecutor bill, we will have a body of work that can be turned over to the prosecutor so that an independent prosecutor can determine whether or not, charges should be filed against a police officer. And then we hope that we can get a jury that will see the verdict that is fair and just. With the independent prosecution bill, which is 1507, that is going to be heard today, the last day of policy cutoff, but better late than never. And that will set up an independent prosecutor underneath the Attorney General's office. There are many people in community who would like to have that prosecuting office on its own, but I believe that we have financial limitations to do that now, but we can always improve the bill, and we will continue to work to do that as we move forward. I don't know if Representative Levitt hasn't had an opportunity to be here. There are other members of the team.
Well, before we skip on, we're going to go back. I accidentally missed one part, and that will give our representatives who are still trying to get on a little bit more time. And I thank you so much for kicking us off, Representative Enderman, our immediate past chair of the VMC. So if our tech friends could load up the video that we have, and that should give us some more time. Wonderful.
Hello all, this is Representative Jesse Johnson from the 30th Legislative District. Happy Black History Month. I currently serve as the legislature's youngest member, and I'm working on police accountability, workforce planning, and career pathways, supporting our working families across the state of Washington. I was formerly a career and college counselor at the high school level and have also served as a city council member, and look forward to talking about the issues with you all and learning about what priorities we can achieve this legislative session. Thank you.
We as Black African Americans have been battling racism and its effects of post-traumatic slave syndrome. We are the heartbeat of America since our ancestors built this country. Our blood, sweat, and tears and death made this country $3 trillion, for which the state of Washington benefited from. This country spends billions of dollars keeping us divided. Anytime we have to rely upon our enemy for our survival, we are in bad shape. That's why I'm sponsoring House Bill 1395 that restores our ability to create generational wealth with owning our own land for farming and ranching. And my hope is that all of the state of Washington will celebrate the end of slavery with House Bill 1016, establishing Juneteenth as a state paid holiday, and ensuring that good, hardworking tenants are not being evicted because of the hardships that COVID-19 has created by passing House Bill 1441. Please visit my website to follow all the bills I'm sponsoring and co-sponsoring, melanie.morgan@ledge.wa.gov.
Hi, my name is Representative David Hackney of the 11th Legislative District, which includes the Georgetown and South Park neighborhoods of Seattle, the city of Tukwila, the city of Renton and Kent, and parts of unincorporated King County. I am proud to serve as Vice Chair of the Capital Budgets Committee, as well as serving on the Public Safety Committee and the Transportation Committee. My focus this term are on 2 juvenile justice bills that are addressing mass incarceration of youth of color, as well as a bill that will facilitate funding for an equitable and climate-friendly transit system in King County. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Lovick, and I represent the 44th District in Snohomish County. I look forward to spending time with you today as we celebrate Black History Month. This is my 14th year in the legislature, and I have to tell you, it is so delightful to have so many members in our Black Member Caucus. When I was first elected in 1998, I was the only member, and you have to know this, there is power in numbers. So let's make it a great day. I look forward to spending time with you. Thank you.
So that's just a taste of what we have to share with you today. And I still don't know if Representative Lovick was able to get on the video, but he's in the video. So what I'm going to do is pitch it over to Vice Chair Harris Talley, and we're going to go out of order just so that we can keep this meeting going along so we can get to your questions. Vice Chair Harris Talley.
Thank you, Chair Taylor, and thank you to every neighbor who's here and the good word I hope you'll share with neighbors who could not be here today. I want to thank all in community who organized today, and it's such a pleasure for us to spend our lunchtime with you. I am Representative Kirsten Harris Talley, she, her pronouns, and the newest addition to our Women of Color delegation representing the 37th Legislative District, which includes Renton, Skyway, and Southeast Seattle, the most diverse legislative district in Washington State. And I feel honored to serve to the Black, Indigenous, and people of color of our district. I have the pleasure of being Vice Chair of the Black Member Caucus. I'm also Vice Chair of the Children, Youth, and Families Committee, which concentrates on issues impacting youth, including juvenile justice, child care, and homeless youth services. I also serve on the Finance Committee around Avenue and also on the Environment and Energy Committee. And I am really proud of the set of bills I've been able to introduce this leg session. I come from activism in community and reproductive justice, economic justice, and policing justice, and really wanted to bring a strong voice of what equity can look like for us moving forward. I have 2 bills that are currently in consideration in rules and approach, which means they are moving forward in the process, hopefully to be heard on the floor this leg session. The first of which is 1156 for local elections options. As folks know, we passed the Washington Voting Rights Act a few years ago, but we have been short on tools that local communities can use to make sure that they have equitable representation of people of color in local elections. This bill brings forward ranked choice voting, as well as granting potential for local communities who want equity in their local voting system. So I'm very proud of this bill. It's been built with and for community for a number of years, and I really feel that this year could be the year we take it over the finish line. I also have Bill 1331, looking at equity and impact fees for childcare centers. Impact fees are the fees assessed by local counties and cities around what impacts a business has when it moves into our communities. But we've had inequity in childcare facilities being charged sometimes up to 5 times what other types of businesses are charged for impact fees. And I know for so many in my community, I'm a mom of a kindergartner who started during the pandemic, as well as a 4th grader. Having culturally competent and accessible childcare is such a huge priority for our neighbors. And I wanted to make sure that inequity in those fees was addressed. So happy to see that bill moving forward as well. And then I have 2 very big idea bills that we'll be working on through interim, and I hope many of you can lend voice to as well. One is 1494, an anti-displacement property tax exemption. As folks know, many of elders and others in our communities have been pushed out of our communities because of displacement, oftentimes fueled by inequity in the amount of property taxes we have to pay compared to others in our state who actually have more room to pay into our systems. This would allow up to a $250,000 tax exemption on your primary home of residence, really addressing the inequity that we have in property taxes, working to try to bring that cost down and keep folks in their homes and keep our folks in our communities, because I want to make sure every person who contributes to our communities is able to stay. And then I also have 1496, which is looking at the moratorium that we have had over during the pandemic, which is now almost a year long, which is hard to believe that we've all been weathering this for the last year, and making the moratorium that we've had on cutting off people's heating and electricity during this time, and making that something permanent in Washington state. So no one has to worry about their inability to pay being a reason that they wouldn't have life-saving electricity and heat. So we'll be, again, stewarding those 2 bills through interim and invite folks to contribute and give voice. I also wanted to say with Black History Month, I was new to learning this year that we had Black representation at the opening of what it was to have governance in this state. And I think it means a lot to have a doubling of our Black member caucus at this time. I think it speaks something about this moment and also what it is to revisit Black Lives Matter. So many folks here have been fighting the good fight on that front for generations. And I just feel honored to be elevated in a role of representation, to be stand shoulder to shoulder with so many representatives. We will continue to center your voices. Please reach out, be heard, make sure that we understand what's happening for you and how these laws impact your life, because that's what helps us shape not only the laws we steward, but other laws that impact your lives. So thank you for all you do, and deep appreciation for spending time with us today. I'm going to give it back to you, Chair Taylor.
Thank you, Vice Chair Harris-Talley. We will kick it to Representative Johnson. And Representative Johnson, if you could concentrate on the non-police reform bills, because we're going to get to you in a minute about that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all that are here for this African American Ledge Day. This is my favorite day of the session, and it's good to see so many faces. I see you, Emil from UW, representing as always. I just want to say I represent the 30th District, which is centered in Federal Way, and Auburn, Milton, Pacific, Algona, and unincorporated King County, also home to Federal Way High School, my alma mater, which is the most diverse high school in the state and 5th most diverse high school in this country, actually. And, you know, we have I've been in this position now for a year, but we've made great strides. I'm really excited about my new seatmate, Rep. Taylor, and the work and expertise that she brings to the table. This year, we're working on a number of issues from workforce development so that we can center our communities of color, our Black community, and provide more opportunities and increase economic mobility in our communities. We're also working on, obviously, housing and making sure that we have housing for all. We're looking at, obviously, we'll talk about police reform and accountability, but public health. How do we make sure that our communities of color have access to public health and have access to meeting their medical needs? And I'll also say education is very important this year. I'm deeply concerned about our students and this loss of learning, specifically our students of color, our Black students, and how do we make sure that we mitigate for that, and working on a number of issues in education. Last year, I was happy to sponsor a budget proviso to put together a work group to look at building a Black history curriculum across the state of Washington. I'll have a budget recommendation in that aspect so we can create an endorsement for Black studies in our state. And we can also create PD and training for teachers so that we can recruit and retain our high quality teachers to teach Black studies in our high schools. Also, obviously, digital equity, making sure that our districts have laptops and tech needs that meet the time that we're in this pandemic. And finally, I'll say juvenile justice issues, working on reentry so that we have programs for our young people to come back into society once they get out of the system. Juvenile rehabilitation is a big passion of mine, something I worked on the city council in Federal Way. So making sure that we have vocational and employment programs and providing access to jobs for young people. So I'll leave it at that and we can move on to the next person, but just glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Johnson. Yes, my seatmate, first fam, got the Divine Nine up in the house here. So we're going to go to my sorority sister, April Berg, and then we're going to close it out with the introductions with our Greek fam, Senator Noble. So Representative Berg.
Thank you so much, Rep. Taylor, and it's great to be here. Second year in a row and first year as a legislator. So I just want to thank everyone on this call and in the community for their support. My name is Representative April Berg, and I am excited and honored to be representing the 44th Legislative District. That includes Mill Creek, Lake Stevens, Snohomish, a little bit of Marysville, and a little bit of Everett. I say that with emphasis because I am proud to be part of a delegation that is 100% people of color. Myself, Representative Lovick, and of course Senator Hobbs, representing a predominantly white district. I cannot say that enough. Representation matters. We are everywhere. It is amazing to be at this point in time in history where you can have two Black state reps representing a predominantly white and in some ways very unfortunate conservative, I'll say in all the wrong ways, district. And so it's important, and it's important that I give my lived experience and my voice to pieces of legislation where sometimes we get overlooked. It's easy to think of any community, but it's been egregious to think of our Black community as a monolith, that we're only in certain places talking about certain things and only asked to be a part of the conversation at certain times. And so I am really hoping that my presence here, Rep. Lovick's presence, has really changed the narrative and changed that conversation. We are everywhere. That said, I'm working on legislation that shows that. I've been honored and overwhelmed to actually get 3 bills passed this virtual session. The first bill I had passed dealt with fire districts. It was Bill 1159, dealing with the number of fire commissioners on fire districts. My second bill, and I know this is a sexy one, timber purchase reporting requirements, right? But again, I am a Black woman in the suburbs having influence on tax issues that relate to timber, and that in and of itself is powerful and important. That bill has passed our floor. The bill that I had Friday passed, which was just, I will say, my baby. I'm excited. Rep. Morgan did a lot of the work on this in previous sessions, and it has to do with eliminating lunch copays for students who are on reduced lunch. So that means that as we are feeding our children right now in this pandemic, no questions asked. Families show up to our districts. They're allowed to get as many free meals as they need for the students in their households. Well, when we come back, because of my bill 1342, those students on reduced lunch will no longer have to pay a copay. That is big, it is huge, it is necessary. It's the moral thing to do, but we need to codify it into law. It's moving now from the House into the Senate. Let your senators know House Bill 1342 is there for them to pass. I am confident once it's passed in the Senate, it will be signed by the governor because it's the right and moral thing to do. The other bill that I have coming up that will hopefully get off the House floor soon is it deals with young women, and it's Bill 1273, and it deals with young women in menstruation. We're one of the few states that don't provide free menstruation and period products for our young women in educational settings. It's important, it's a barrier, and we need to eliminate it. As we're reimagining education, we have to be very specific how we reimagine how our kids are doing education when we reopen our schools. So this is another big important bill that'll be going over to the Senate. Luckily, there's a companion bill over there already, so hopefully they'll kind of merge into one great big bill and get signed. But I want to let you know, I'm the Vice Chair of Finance. And it's an important position because I think, as Rep. Harris-Talley mentioned before, being involved in conversations about structural tax reform as a Black Members Caucus is huge, important, and necessary as we move to a more progressive tax code. So I would love to chop it up all day about education and structural tax reform, but I'm going to pass it back to my sister, my friend, and my colleague, Rep. Taylor.
Thank you, Rep. Berg. We're going to now pass it to Senator Noble, and I actually see some of your Delta sisters here, so I know there's a lot of excitement from your support system and our Greek sisters out here in the community. Love to see all the excitement and engagement with how we are connected in the community. Senator Nobles, what would you like to share with us today?
Thank you very much, Chair Taylor. Good morning or afternoon, everyone. I'm Senator Tawana Nobles and currently serving as the only Black senator in the entire state of Washington, and feel very honored and could not be here without those who came before me. So definitely want to give honor to the first Black female that served, Senator Rosa Franklin, and all of the Black members who served before all of us. Thank you for being here. I just want to highlight on a couple of things that I've been working on. We are now in our 6th week. Those of us who are new, we have been legislators now for 6 whole weeks, or almost 6 weeks. And I've dropped 7 bills. Several of them are I've had to work on a lot more than others, but I want to highlight a couple of bills. One is my college-bound increased access to the college-bound scholarship bill, and so that would auto-enroll students instead of them having to complete the pledge, which loses about 10,000 eligible students each year. I am working really hard with stakeholders to make sure we have a very strong entitlement, because currently, if you take out all of the criteria to receive the scholarship, if you take out the pledge, take out the GPA requirement, take out no felony, then it weakens the entitlement, which means if the state legislature changes, we'll be chasing down these dollars like we have to chase down other critical dollars for our community, TANF dollars, SNAP dollars. And I don't want students who we've promised to fund their education to be in that predicament where it's like, oh, we don't have the money this year, when, just 6 years prior, they thought that their college education would be funded. So we're working to strengthen that language, which takes a little more time, but that bill is making its way through the process. I'm also very excited about a bill that I dropped last week, which would allow community members to make payments on their vehicle tabs, vehicle fees and taxes. And while that does not eliminate what some folks want to see as eliminate the taxes or the entire high cost of our renewal, I know for me, I want to increase transit and transportation options in my community. So I want to pay that amount. I also am not on a higher spectrum of renewal fees, but some folks are paying $500, $400, $300 times 2 because they have 2 vehicles or more. And so this will allow folks to make quarterly payments on their car tabs, because I have met community members who simply have not been able to drive their vehicles because they could not afford to renew their car tabs once all of the ST3 funds were added additional taxes and fees. So we want to remove that barrier. I did see someone comment about domestic violence, and I did drop a bill that would add non-fatal strangulation to how we are defining assault, and to make sure we're putting resources towards examinations so that those who are victims can hold their attackers accountable by having that examination, because there typically is not the same type of evidence left behind with non-fatal strangulation, but we still want to make sure that we are holding perpetrators accountable by putting funds towards those examinations. And then I have also dropped a data collection bill for police accountability and transparency that would collect data on use of force, as well as a Parks RX, so prescribing parks and recreation for healing for community members, a mental health sentencing alternative. So when our community members are having interactions with law enforcement and they're struggling with mental health issues, that we are looking at sentencing alternatives for those community members. And then my very first bill that passed off the Senate floor is near and dear to me because I have experienced foster care, but it's a bill to require a point of contact at all of our school sites for students who are experiencing foster care. There are currently district liaisons, but this would require every school site to have someone who will know the names and needs of our students experiencing foster care. And then I'm really excited. I serve the 28th legislative district, and so that's a little bit of Tacoma, but Fircrest, UP, Steilacoom, DuPont, Lakewood, Joint Base Lewis McChord, Anderson Island, McNeil Island, Ketron Island. And so we have, very unique needs here, but I have sponsored budget requests to fund transportation projects in Lakewood and Fircrest, JBLM, Hilltop housing project, Shiloh Baptist Church's housing project, the Arlington Drive housing project. But I'm really looking for ways to think about my priorities as a legislator, which fit in with the priorities that we have as a Black caucus, that are, recovering from COVID, finding housing options, housing our unhoused community members, focusing on education. And while I get to drop bills, I also get to sponsor requests to have projects be included in our capital and operating budgets. And so feel very honored to do so. I'm going to definitely pause so we can get to questions, but just want to thank you all for your time today and for your work in community as well. Thank you, and I'll pass it back to you, Chair.
Thank you so much. And I will just quickly highlight what I'm working on in addition to chairing the Black Members Caucus. You all, I'm just in honor and humbled to serve with you and serve you as your chair. What's interesting about this year's legislature is that we're in a pandemic and we've been doing everything virtually. We only had one day to be in person in real life. But you know what happened before we even got on campus? There was an insurrection in Washington, D.C., and that spilled into Washington State. And your Black Members Caucus mobilized with the Members of Color Caucus to let our leadership know that we experienced that trauma differently than other lawmakers. And that is a key reason why you saw 750 National Guard people to ensure that the business of Washington State can be conducted at the beginning of this legislature. So we are already showing that we have influence at critical tables and as a collective and individually. But I've also realized that, being a lawmaker is not as simple and straightforward. I've experienced a bill that died on me. I thought it would be easy. Why not have a bill on unclaimed property? It's your money, you want it now, but that bill is not going anywhere. So I'm going to do my best to make sure that the community knows that they have unclaimed property. I'm talking about $50, $25, $100. Every time you move from one apartment to another and you have utilities to get shut off and they can't find you, that money is sitting in the Treasury or in the Department of Revenue, and it's your money to claim. We'll get a link in the chat so that you know where you can go to find more information about that. But that was one of those reality checks that, just because I introduce a bill doesn't mean it gets passed. In addition to that, I focused on COVID response. And one of the bills that I put forth that's still alive is to expand the number of respiratory therapists who are going to be in the state. As you know, with COVID, it affects your lungs. So we're going to absolutely need respiratory therapists in our communities. No, I don't want to go all the way to Seattle if I live down in Pierce County or in Walla Walla County. I want to go to a respiratory therapist and caregivers in my own community. Also, we've seen with the pandemic, there's a shift in how we get to work. So we have to address the transportation demand. So that means, what does carpooling look like? Van pooling. We have communities where folks could get in a van and get to the office, but you have to have at least 6 people. Well, you know, we have folks who need to get to work would carpool, but they can't get there without a change in the legislation. And then lastly, we have a lot of the young people and seasoned folks who are making a pivot in their career because they're in a service industry or they're impacted by the pandemic and they lost their job. And so we want to make sure that we have expanded opportunities for accessing career and technical education scholarships. When you're making the pivot and you're going into the next direction, you might be the next you might be the next nurse, doctor, healthcare provider, things that people and opportunities we desperately need in our community. We want to expand that. And what's amazing when you're in this process, you go into committees, you get to see familiar faces. We represent nearly every single committee in the House of Representatives. So we've got leadership represented up and down the board. And that influence is critical to getting our agenda passed. As you may know, the House Democratic Caucus has 4 priorities. And the Black Members Caucus has selected bills that fit within those 4 priorities. We have, first and foremost, we are prioritizing all of the police reform bills, and that's a long list. And so we'll get into that more deeply in a few minutes. So racial equity, COVID response, so healthcare needs, vaccinations, economic recovery, and environmental justice. And so we have made sure that we have bills that we're supporting and championing through the legislature that support community, the Black community. And when you lift up the Black community, you lift up the whole community. So I think we can come back to Mr. Prawl to get us started with the Q&A, because you all want to hear from us on some specific details. And certainly want to encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. We'll have updates as you go along, and bear with us as we grow our organization and our communication tools with you so you can stay connected.
Thank you, Representative Taylor. Wonderful presentation. At this time, we are taking questions in the chat. So if anybody got a question, you want to put it in the chat at this particular time.
Let me kick it off with a question to Mr. Johnson, Representative Johnson. You know, you're working on a suite of police reform bills. Are there any particular bills that you need support from the community to ensure that they keep moving forward?
That's a great question. Thank you. I would say all the bills. We have some major reforms coming up. I think Representative Intiman mentioned House Bill 1267 to establish statewide independent investigations. That bill is currently in appropriation, so we need to hear it from a fiscal impact before it moves forward in the process. But it's always helpful to continue keeping the pressure on those in leadership to hear those bills. I would also say House Bill 1054 on police tactics. This bill is going to effectively ban certain tactics across our state, including chokeholds and all neck restraints and no-knock warrants, restricting tear gas and vehicular pursuits and shooting at moving vehicles. This bill has got a lot of press, but I think the big thing about this is we have to look at the large picture of what we're doing across the whole reform package. And without independent investigations, without qualified immunity, looking at private cause of action, without community oversight boards, we don't have as much of an impact. And so all the accountability is a constellation of a lot of different efforts. And so all of these bills are really important to get across the finish line. I would also say House Bill 1310, we just moved out of committee last week in public safety. This bill is an important bill to change our current statute for a new use of force standard across our state. Right now in our statute in the state of Washington, to make an arrest, you can make an arrest by literally any means necessary, is exactly what it says. And this bill will require that that authorization of power that we give to police is diminished in creating a statewide reasonable care standard. So that means officers have to exhaust all available de-escalation tactics prior to using physical force. They cannot engage in conduct that would create a situation that required physical force. So for example, if somebody is jaywalking across the street, the officer chases after them, and the person then turns around and does a violent gesture or what the officer perceives as a gesture, then the officer can use force under our current standard. We want to diminish that because we know that a lot of times officers will create and become the aggressor in that situation and then use self-defense as a qualifier. So we want to diminish that use of force standard. We also, with the use of force standard, are making lethal force a last resort and making sure that there are only certain circumstances where lethal force is authorized. So all of these bills are really important because they work together to create accountability and transparency. And we have a number of major bills that are just waiting to be heard right now. So I think the more we legislators hear from community about why these bills are important, the better we are to get those to the floor. So I'll include the 3 bills I mentioned that I'm working on and others in the chat, just so we can have links to those bills. But I would just say they're all important because they all work together.
Thank you, Rep. Johnson. Okay, so, the chat is moving fast and furious right now. So I'm gonna try to go backwards a little bit. And what are practical tools us everyday folks can do to support your efforts? Something easy for the non-engaged. Rep. Harris-Talley, as an organizer, could you share with us what you think?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Taylor, and thank you all for that question. You know, today is policy cutoff. That means for all of our policies going through policy committee, this is the last opportunity they'll have a chance to be heard either in the hearing or in exec session. But there's so many ways this ledge session with the remote session to have your voice heard. For any hearings or policy that you support, you can still contact the prime sponsor. You can also look up any bill and see the other folks who sponsored that bill within our legislature. You can also check on the status of that bill. If it has been referred to rules, appropriations, or finance committees in the House or in Ways and Means in the Senate for our colleague, Senator Nobles on that side, you can continue to give voice and advocate for that bill to be moved through the process. You can do that by writing in. We do read your emails. They make a huge difference. The volume of emails we get about a certain topic or issue makes a big difference, and it makes a difference for our colleagues beside us as well. And I want to say this clearly. We as Black legislators, we are our 9 voices amongst many voices that are not Black legislators. So hearing from you, our neighbors, to amplify what we are trying to say and representing you makes a huge difference in the process. And then also telling your neighbors about what's happening. I cannot emphasize this enough. Folks are working all day. You know, we're doing this all day. I know my work days 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. practically every day of the week. And I know that's the same for my colleagues. But a lot of folks don't have time, you know, to check in and be up on TVW and seeing what's going on. So when you see something you care about, tell your neighbor, make sure they know their voice can be heard. They can send that email message, give a call any time of day, and it'll be received. And that makes a big difference as well. So those are just a couple ways, I think, through the process. I also want to note, I have been really encouraged with hearings with this remote session. We're hearing from folks who can get interpretation and translation services in real time giving testimony. Folks who are able to give testimony from parts of the state where usually you wouldn't be able to get over the mountain pass to meet us in Olympia. And all that equity and voice being heard is something I hope we keep at the other side of this when we're able to be back together in person, because all the tools we have to get your voice heard and what you care about matters. Elevated is what we should be championing. I'm going to give it back to you, Chair Taylor.
Thank you. I see a question that says, are there any bills or proposals to address homelessness? And I'll go ahead and take that question. We can't afford to let more people fall into homelessness. And without rental assistance, without this eviction moratorium, without other resources, we certainly would see that happen. And so the solution we see is a series of bills that address providing robust rent assistance, targeted eviction process reforms to require rent repayment plans, mediation, and legal representation for tenants. So for example, in New York, you have a right to an attorney in housing court. Preventing evictions by requiring good cause. That's my bill, House Bill 1236, and I'm working on with prime sponsor Rep. Macri, and reducing the long-term consequences of evictions for tenants re-entering the rental market. And I know that Rep. Morgan has entered basically a bill that protects tenants who have been impacted by the COVID-19 inability to pay rent, protects them from discrimination in terms of trying to get new housing. But most importantly, we need to get that money into the hands of the tenants so that they can pay their rent, and so that we don't leave the landlords, especially small mom and pop landlords, holding the bag. They're doing their very best to keep people in their housing. Obviously, we're going to have the end of the eviction moratorium come, but what people may not realize is that it's not a rent moratorium. So let's make sure that folks are negotiating the best option so they can keep their tenancy even longer, and that they have, just cause evictions that protect them from landlords who abuse the system, which has been going on for years. I mean, like I said earlier today, we know that there have been problems prior to the pandemic, and these issues just got amplified by the global crisis that we're facing. Oh gosh, there are a lot of questions coming fast and furious. Rep. Harris-Talley, can you help me field some of these questions? I know you're so excellent at that. And we'll just buoy back and forth real quick. I think I saw a question around whether or not gun rights will be restored to folks who have been convicted of a felony. I'm not sure that I've seen a bill about that, but we have seen many bills that are addressing voting restoration rights, championed by Rep. Simmons, and other restorative justice efforts for folks who've been incarcerated. So it's really important that we get those resources to community. Rep. Harris-Talley, any?
Yeah, so some folks have some questions about there being youth employment programs, such as some in Seattle, and noted that such programs are needed in Kent, Covington, Federal Way. What can be done to address expanding some of these programs to other parts of the state? I don't know if any of our representatives are working on any of those issues or part of the committees that see those issues.
I can briefly touch on that. I put some in the chat. Thanks, Rochelle, for the question. So I know through Career Connect Washington and that initiative, there's a lot of dollars out there for the construction and building trades and getting young people into pre-apprenticeship. So I'm happy to work on a budget proviso to get money in the Federal Way School District to have a pre-apprenticeship program for juniors and seniors. So it's a running start for the trades program. And then when they graduate, they would be into the King County's direct priority hire program to go to work at labor unions in King County. We also are trying to develop a partnership with Sound Transit and the DOT so that a lot of these light rail projects that are being worked on will have to have at least a 20% apprenticeship utilization on the job sites from the Federal Way School District. So working on that now. So it's not a direct student employment program, but it is trying to get more students into that field that definitely has some great opportunities for career and living wage jobs for our kids.
Can I add to that, Representative Jamila? This is Bunny Thomas, and I was the consultant that set up the apprenticeship requirements for Sound Transit. And one of the things that we did actually on Harborview project is we incorporated language called contiguous neighborhoods. So the contractors were required, not optional, but were required to incorporate within a certain mile range to hire people into apprenticeship programs or get them into the pipeline. But make sure that you have a compliance officer to make sure that happens.
Yes, thank you. I've seen a few questions related. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just checking if we had room for one more question or not, but you go ahead. Sorry, Chair.
I think we have, are we almost out of time? Okay, it's going by really fast. I wanted to address a couple of issues that came up in the chat a number of times. One is domestic violence, and the other is the stigma around mental health and substance abuse, which we do have bills that are active right now that are addressing, that one particular bill that is addressing adding mobile crisis intervention folks. So if you've heard of the program where civilians are deployed to a mental health crisis instead of law enforcement, we want to get this program into our cities statewide. We know that the program has been implemented in Olympia, and Eugene, Oregon, where I'm from, has been using this program for 20 plus years, and it's working very successfully there and in Denver and in other cities. So if any way we can have non-law enforcement assistance on violent activities, I think that will help address some of the issues and getting people directly to the resources they need without having to be referred by law enforcement. Also, there's a series of bills addressing the overall challenges within the mental health and substance use industry, and including adding more service staff, adding more opportunities for resources into community. And one of the things as the Black Members Caucus we will do is make sure that we look at all of these bills with an equity lens. I mean, because there are things that are put out there to benefit all of Washington, but sometimes we don't get access to the resources that are quote unquote designed around us, but we don't get to access it. So that is something that keeps the Black community in many ways from accessing and seeing its full potential when we're not able to take advantage of not only the restorative services, but also the economic justice services. So having an Office of Equity fully funded, having an Office of the Minority and Women Business Enterprises fully funded and working for the benefit of the Black community and other folks of color are critical. So we need to make sure that those resources are actually getting to community. And this is, again, where your assistance and letting us know, hey, this money got funded, but it got redirected, or the resources are not being applied with us in mind. Rep. Harris-Talley, are there any other questions?
Thank you, Jamila, Representative Jamila Taylor. Can you hear me? You're muted.
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. We want to say thank you to you and all of the BMC members. We appreciate you all coming on this afternoon and for such a beautiful presentation. There are other questions in the chat. If you guys can put in a link that the public can also send questions directly to you, that would be awesome. And we're going to move along. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. I want to move on to our next part of the agenda. And one of the things that I want to mention is about some capital budget project that's being worked on by the governor's office. And one of them are the Hasbury House. Dr. Nady J. Hasbury possibly the first Black woman in the United States to earn a PhD, purchased the Asbury House in the Hilltop neighborhood of Tacoma over 115 years ago. Grant funding will help the Tacoma City Association of Colored Women's Clubs to acquire the historic home from a home in the Hilltop neighborhood. It has very taught music and Black history to local youth during her life. She founded the Tacoma CWC and helped found the first NAACP chapter on the West Coast. Acquiring the Asbury home symbolic claim and celebrate her life, work, and contribution for the Black community. And I believe that's a 800,000 capital bond. And then another one is Africa Town Land Trust. Received funding to purchase the Cairo Center site, a former nursing home in Seattle Central District. A developer bought the property after the nursing home fell on hard times. Africa Town Land Trust intend to turn the property into affordable housing. And I believe it's going to take about a 13.8 million capital bound to get this done. And I also want to mention the McKinney Center funding will help the Central District Community Preservation Development Authorities restore the McKinney Center for Community and Economic Development. This facility was formed known as the Seattle Vocational Institute, and the state transferred to the CDC PDA earlier this year. The project will also receive operating budget funds to help with general operation costs, and that's about $480,000 in general fund. And I believe there's some other funding that they need to continue to work on the project and making it operational. At this point, I would like to mention, as you see, I don't know if we have Pastor Baber available, but the WCLC is instrumental in leading African-American, Charles Rolland African-American Legislative Day. And because we were so much, I would say, whole of exciting things going on in this Zoom conversation that that we would like to have Pastor Baber say something addressing what the Washington State Christian Leaders Coalition do in general in their work all year long. Pastor Baber, are you available?
Yeah, thank you, Gabriel and Vanessa. And I want to thank you all for your work behind the scenes to make this day possible. And I'm encouraged by what I've witnessed on this day. This is something that has been going on for over 20 years, African American Legislative Day. It has as I said, a long history. And it starts with this understanding about you can't get everything done in one day. And I remember coming down where Representative Rosa Franklin and Eric Pettigrew for many years were the only two elected officials we had that were African American. And we can go back before that with George Fleming. And I want to commend, as we now look at all of these very dynamic Black women who now make up part of the delegation. And in some ways, I'm thankful because I was invited to my first African American Legislative Day during the tenure of Christine Gregoire. And it was a civics lessons of unpreparedness and that we can do better is what resonated with me for that day. And we partnered, and I should just say, when I say we partnered, is I said we as the Black community need to do a better job for our legislative day. And that began a journey and a process. And in that journey and process, two people played key roles, three people. Verlene Davis, the late Verlene Davis, and the late Charles Rollins, along with retired Pastor Freeman Rhodes. And by that, as we were participants in African American Legislative Day, and I want to do a quick history and I won't be long with it. We were participants. We were not part of the arrangement. We were not anything, but we were, as pastors, we were given an opportunity to be participants through the commission. And over time, the commission walked away and wanted to jettison African American Legislative Day, the Commission on African American Affairs. And Dr. Freeman Rhodes, retired pastor from Bethlehem Baptist of Tacoma, and I were working to put together what was called the Washington Christian Leaders Coalition, WCLC. And I'll be honest, I just said, that's not our wheelhouse. That's not something we need to be concerned about. But he said, Baber, we need to protect and make sure that we hold this African American Legislative Day for the Black community, because what we were putting together was a statewide organization of clergy, because we said if there are things that the Black clergy, and they said the one organization we know that's in every Black community is a church, and it's organized. And that's what we want to put together and work with some of the other Latino and Asian pastors and churches so that we can begin to affect minorities across the state in a better way. So coming forward from that, Charles Rollins was a political operative. He engineered and planned the election of the first African-American mayor to the largest city in this state, Seattle. So that was what Charles brought to it. In fact, he, for a while, was the state chairperson for the Democratic Party. So Charles was very versed in the political aspects. Verlene was a community organizer, working not only with APRI, but community organizing people for the votes, to get out to vote. And never dismiss community organizers are someone who gets someone elected in a city that has less than 8% Blacks, but can get them elected to become the mayor of that city of over 1 million people. So they were very good. In fact, our country has shown that a community organizer in Chicago managed to go from being a community organizer to a state senator, to a senator for the state at the federal level, to a 2-term president of this country. So community organizers know something about putting people together and taking advantage of that. So I say all that to say there was an awareness phase, which is phase 1. There's engagement, which is phase 2. And then phase 3 is results, efficiency, legacy, and commitment, phase 3. All of that, the Washington Christian Leaders Coalition has done. And watching what goes on today, the efficiency, the results, and the legacy of that commitment continues. And one of the things I was always saying is that this is not just a moment. You cannot come to Olympia on one day and in that moment get everything that is needed across the state for our communities. It won't happen. Legislators do 2 things. They make laws, they spend our tax dollars. It can't be done in one moment. And so I said, this has to be a movement. It's a marathon and not a sprint. And so today, watching what happened, our lives are still at risk behind actions of police that need to be reformed. We are still being impacted by COVID. That needs to be addressed. We are everywhere, as the Representative Berg talked about. But I am so pleased that there are these Black women who are committed. Stacey Abrams in Atlanta, I've talked with her organization. I'm just impressed with what she's done, with what these women have done here, and there's so many that have worked hard. I want to thank Dr. Banks, who was also a chair of the Washington Christian Leaders Coalition. I want to thank Dr. Gregory Christopher of Shiloh Baptist Church. Dr. Banks was of Eastside Baptist. We worked with pastors across the state, and we will continue to do that to make sure that this day and our citizens of this state are prepared. I think with the laws we have in front of us, Washington State is positioned to set what could be a model for other states and Black communities on how to better control and reform your police so that every encounter that an African American has with the police need not lead to fatal consequences. And then just with impunity, the police can walk away. And also we need to look at how we can deal with this pandemic and how it has impacted us. So I am both encouraged and happy as I have witnessed and watched what has unfolded leading up to this day and this day. And as I said, it's not over. It's more than a moment. It's more than a minute. It's more than a day. But it is our journey to make our community and to make our people's lives better. And by the way, when you make our lives better, somebody quoted Byron Johnson from the Equal Justice Initiative. When you make the lives better of those who are the worst in your society, the society as a whole benefits. And that's what we do. Every time our lives are made better, and by that I mean African Americans, the whole of this country is made better. And it won't be easy because there are a lot of forces and powers against it, but that doesn't matter. I think as someone said, truth may be on the scaffold and it may be beaten down, but truth will always rise, especially when there's a lie that's on the throne. And we have lived through that lately. So God bless you all, continue. And I thank you for this opportunity and I look forward to even more and as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Baber. We're gonna move on to giving acknowledgement to our APRI Seattle chapter sponsors.
First of all, I would like to thank APRI National for their contribution in and support. I would also like to thank the organizations, the labor organization that financially support APRI yearly to do the work that we do. And that's MLK Labor, Lyona 242, UFCW 21, the Washington State Labor Council, SCIU, ILW, FAN, IAM 751, Whoopsie, and a special shout out to Omari Salisbury, who is right now advertising and showing live this event throughout the nation and of the world. I also want to thank the organization, also Steve Celso, a Labor Radio podcast that also did a video of myself and Reverend Waldine and Joe Schubert, who are also members of APRI Seattle. And we probably put that video up almost at the end, watch. And also I want to thank the organization that participated in this event, like the Urban League Seattle and Tacoma, the APRI Tacoma, the MAACP Seattle and Tacoma, and all the other organizations that I've not mentioned that you know who you are, that have been participating with us and joining us in Olympia. I mean, as Pastor Baber stated, this is not a moment, it's a movement. And hopefully when it gets clear when we can be in person, we'll have everybody showing up in Olympia unified to do this work and to make a change for our community as a whole. And I want to thank everyone. Next thing we want to talk about moving on to our next step. And our next step will be to where do we go from here? And that's one of the last things that Dr. King said. Where do we go from here? It means, what are we going to do as a community, as a movement for change? And we will be having a meeting 2 weeks from today. And we're going to be inviting organizations to participate in this meeting so we can work together to work on our plan equal levels to organize in the future to doing a lots of work all year long. Because like, as Pastor Baber stated, it's not a one-day thing. We got work to do all year long. Thank you.
Next, we'd like to welcome our pastor, Reverend Manaway, for closing prayer.
God bless you. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Wow, what a day. What a day. Let's pray. Eternal Father, thank you so much today for this opportunity in life that you've given and granted us to engage the work of making life better for humanity, especially the African American community here in Washington State, and hopefully a template for other states and around our country. We thank you for the APRI leadership and its sponsors. For all of our Black legislators, we ask for your continued grace of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, and that you will provide them with the favor needed to be effective. We thank you for WCLC leadership. We thank you for the presence and for the posture of our governor. And then, Lord, we're so grateful for the sacrifices of Gabriel and Vanessa. May you continue to bless them, give them wisdom and favor as they continue to serve this community well. Thank you for all of our facilitators of Zoom and all of those who have acted as hosts, all of those who made time intentionally to address our community. God, we thank you and we praise you and we call upon you now to make our hearts open, make our hearts sensitive to your movement. And then I pray that you would use us for your glory and for the good of humanity and its good. In the name of the sovereign Savior Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
We're going to close. That will be the adjourning of our event today. But before we all log out, we are going to be showing a slideshow of our activities with APRI. And we also want to give a special thanks to our nationals and to APRI North Carolina's chapter, Danielle Brown, for her tech support today and participation in this event. So enjoy the video, everyone, and have a blessed day.
Thank you.
I'm working, I'm having some difficulty right now. I'm working on it.
No worries. We love you and we appreciate all your hard work to bring this together. Thank you for doing that. And
Thank
God
you.
bless you guys.
Okay, then Vanessa, job well done. Thank y'all for including us today. It was very insightful.
Thank you, Pastor Manaway.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you, Gabriel and Vanessa and all the people who helped with this event, AFO and everyone else. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well done, well done. Glad to be a part of it. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah, well done. Glad to be part of it.
Well done.
Well done. Thank you. Yeah. I'm gone now. Yeah. Yeah.